A lot of people don't like her. A lot of people don't like her either. She's got a big mouth. She talked trash about the original movie.
Controversy has been dogging this movie since the very beginning. So much so that the Daily Wire, I think we played a major role in basically forcing Disney to go reshoot it. Well, it didn't help, apparently. Disney's Snow White was essentially a box office dud.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is
Disney's new live-action remake of Snow White debuted this weekend, and it's an even bigger dud than anticipated.
Disney is having its own problems. They're finally releasing the latest adaptation of Snow White, but they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
Breaking updates. Very important. Snow White, there's been an enormous amount of controversy surrounding Snow White, obviously.
I think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie. She's an asshole.
And now you better have a good reason to get people to the theaters, and this ain't it. The movie apparently is not very good. I haven't seen it yet. I would be shocked if it were. Again, the star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public. Studios really need to go back to what they originally did, which was tell your stars to shut up and not say things, because no one is paying to hear your star say offensive things off the screen.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do...
If there was a way to make the backlash worse, Rachel Zegler found it.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's crisis mode when it comes to Disney having to backtrack. She talks about how this isn't a fairy tale about falling in love with the prince. This is a fairy tale about fighting your own battle.
She's not like the ideal choice for the lead role in Sweet Snow White.
Now, one thing that is already universally known at this point by the general public is the fact that Disney is in full-on damage control mode.
This is truly, she has to go. I'm sorry, Disney. She has to go.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry.
There are a lot of reasons you have to suspend disbelief when you watch a movie like Snow White. There's magic, and there's talking forests and animals that act in human ways and such. But probably the biggest aspect of disbelief you have to suspend is the idea that Gal Gadot, as the wicked witch here, as the evil stepmother, is somehow less good looking than Rachel Zegler. Come on, gang. We ain't blind.
Neither of them make any sense for their roles. We've already covered how Rachel Zegler is a terrible choice for Snow White. Gal Gadot, who plays the queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen. The evil queen is supposed to be envious of Snow White's beauty, and that is just not believable. I cannot buy that Gal Gadot is angry that she's not as beautiful as Rachel Zegler. I cannot buy that.
I understand that we're supposed to pretend that disabilities no longer exist or something, but we're not all blind. We can still see. I don't know if that mirror was broken.
Has there been a film with worse casting than this? And I don't just mean the Snow White actress. Obviously, she's terrible, but both of them.
Oh, man. Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
There's a reason why the public has shifted. If you can't avoid this movie, you absolutely should because it's absolute trash. I know some people like this movie. Some people are stupid. Oops!
Picture this, a beloved Disney classic, a lead actress who seems over it, and a wave of critics ready to tear it down. That's exactly what happened when Rachel Zegler took on Snow White 2025, and commentators like Ben Shapiro saw a flop coming from a mile away.
Then they decided to cast Rachel Zegler, who is Hispanic, as Snow White. Now, again, you can cast people however you want to cast people. I really don't care. However, Snow White, in which the description of the character is skin as white as snow, lips red as the rose, right? I mean, there's an actual physical description of the part. Not my fault it's written that way. It ain't racist to write it that way. That's the description of the part. That's what it is. The name of the movie is Snow White. Okay.
And right at the center, Rachel Zegler, acting less like a fairy tale princess and more like someone trapped in a role she clearly couldn't stand.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed.
While the original Snow White was all about singing to birds and bonding with dwarfs, this remake delivered the exact opposite. Confusion, a massive price tag, and probably more stress for Disney executives than the evil queen ever caused.
Behind the scenes, you guys know as well as I do that those executives like Spielberg are looking at that saying, Rachel Zegler can F right off.
This fairy tale makeover went from maybe this could work to a textbook example of how not to revive an 80-year-old classic. No dwarfs, no charm, just a lot of questionable choices. It all started when Disney decided to dust off its crown jewel, Snow White, the first full-length animated feature from the 1930s. Iconic, beloved, and risky to mess with, but Disney went for it anyway, casting Rachel Zegler fresh off her breakout in a big musical hit.
One of the reasons why Rachel Zegler sticks around is she's got a beautiful voice and she has some talent. So I think that certainly helps her because she is a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
Fans were cautiously intrigued. Could Disney modernize a classic without stripping away its heart? But that curiosity quickly turned to confusion when word spread that the iconic dwarfs had been replaced. The reaction online? Instant backlash.
Before we go deeper, quick reminder, hit that like button if you're into breakdowns that cut through the noise. It helps more than you know.
It showed that the dwarves were not, in fact, dwarves in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, because that would be offensive apparently to little people, so instead, they just made the dwarves normal-sized humans, which was idiotic, because that's not the story. Then they decided they couldn't actually cast, little people in these roles, so they decided to cast big people and then shrink them down using CGI, so it looks terrible.
Maybe the missing dwarfs were part of some clever twist. Maybe Disney had a strategy. But then Rachel Zegler stepped in, calling the original story old-fashioned and irrelevant. And just like that, fans realized this remake might be headed for trouble.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 17 years.
That's exactly what Rachel Zegler did. In interview after interview, she made it clear she wasn't a fan of the 1937 original, calling it outdated and far from deserving the spotlight.
Told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Fans didn't take it lightly. Reactions ranged from jaw drops to full-on disbelief. If your lead princess can't even fake a little love for the original, how is anyone supposed to buy into the fantasy? It was like hiring someone to plan a party who hates celebrating. And just when that started sinking in, another issue took center stage. The dwarfs, gone. Instead of the iconic seven, Disney swapped them out for vague magical sidekicks. No charm, no backstory, just CGI placeholders. And suddenly, the heart of the story felt hollow.
The dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, "Why are we doing?"
Now back to it. The title Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is practically set in stone. So when Disney scrapped the dwarfs, fans felt the magic vanish before the movie even dropped.
Where do you stand on that? Drop a comment below. Was cutting the dwarfs the moment this remake lost you, or was it something else entirely?
And then came the real shock. Disney had reportedly poured hundreds of millions into this remake, a risky bet. And what they did with that money, that's where things really start to fall apart.
It cost $270 million to make. $270 million.
You'd think a massive budget would mean stunning visuals, smart marketing, and a cast that actually respects the source. But somehow, Disney spent big and still failed to reassure fans this was a remake worth caring about. Early trailers showed off dramatic scenery but barely touched the story. Posters felt vague and off-brand. It was clear Disney wanted something grand, but what they delivered had fans more confused than excited. And the response when it finally hit theaters? That's when reality hit hard.
Disney has botched this Snow White movie every way it's possible to botch this Snow White movie. So you'll recall that originally the Snow White movie starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, you'll remember that film had a trailer so awful that Disney had to completely recut the movie.
The bigger Disney tried to go, the more fans started expecting the worst. Would flashy CGI really replace the dwarfs? Could sleek visuals cover for a lead who didn't seem to care about the source? When opening weekend hit, the answer was clear, not even close. Projections were already low, around $50 million. Not great for a film that cost an estimated $270 million to make and market. But even that soft target slipped through their fingers. Snow White opened lower than expected, and with that, Disney's fairy tale officially became a flop.
Early estimates suggested that they would take in 48 to 58 million in the first weekend. Apparently, it did 43 million in its first weekend. But this live-action remake is a giant fail. It is not doing well at the box office.
That means Snow White is destined to be one of the biggest bombs in Disney history. it will not recoup.
The flop didn't stay quiet for long. News outlets were quick to pounce, blaming the film's failure on three things: no dwarfs, too much CGI, and a lead actress who couldn't stop criticizing the very story she was supposed to bring to life.
Now you have Rachel Zegler saying, oh, that 1937 movie, that's just, oh, it's tacky, it's weird, we're going to change all that.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
That's when fans dropped the hammer, or maybe just the dwarfless pickaxe, on Rachel Zegler and the entire production. When your lead keeps calling the original story outdated, the audience checks out. Viewers labeled it a self-inflicted wound. Disney's message came across as, remember that classic you love? We changed everything. And our star thinks the old version is a joke. Now buy a ticket. Every bad decision got picked apart. The missing dwarfs, the massive budget, the tone-deaf interviews. The film felt like a high-budget misfire wrapped in bad PR. Some fans were just sad to see a classic treated carelessly. Others, they saw it coming and maybe even enjoyed watching it burn.
Still watching? Then you're exactly who this channel's for. Subscribe now. We break down the stories Hollywood doesn't want you talking about.
Then came reports that Disney executives were blindsided by the backlash. They allegedly had no idea Zegler's interviews would explode the way they did. If that's true, it might be the biggest twist of the entire saga. In an age where every quote can go viral, how did no one see this coming? And by the time Snow White 2025 hit theaters, the hype had already died, buried under memes, takedowns, and internet ridicule echoing louder than a canyon full of dwarfs.
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP. Why not write some new movies? You guys sit around, you have billions of dollars, they keep going back and rewriting the classic.
Maybe there's something to take away from this mess. For Disney, it's a clear warning. Don't gut a classic and expect nostalgia to do the rest. Ignoring the core, like the dwarfs, and casting a lead who looks bored, that's not reinvention. That's sabotage. And actors, you don't have to worship the original, but trashing it while promoting the reboot, that never ends well. There's a big difference between honest updates and flat-out disrespect, and the internet's not shy about pointing it out. And in the end, a massive budget, an unenthusiastic star, and creative decisions that alienated fans turned this into a case study in how to ruin a remake. Was it Zegler's comments that did the most damage? Or did cutting out the dwarfs doom this thing from day one? Could this have worked if they'd just respected the source? Let me know in the comments, and if you like breakdowns like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next disaster we dive into. Because when the magic's missing, even Disney can crash hard.